Yeah. All right. So next we have Mansi Vaidya. The title of our presentation is Accessibility and Inclusivity for Digital Content, Impact, Simulations and Examples. She's currently working at IBM as a user researcher and experience designer. She's a graduate from Bachelor's in Design from Srishti Institute of Design, Art Design and Technology, Bangalore, in 2019. As a part of a thesis project at college, she worked at NIMHANS, Bangalore, to reimagine patient-doctor communication that is inclusive. Her interest in game design helps her to generate research through participatory methods and by creating engaging research activities for understanding the users. Mansi, you have 30 minutes, and post that we'll try to keep the Q&A session for 5 minutes because we're already running out of time. So, all right,
Sure.
over to you, Mansi.
Thanks, Anjali. Thanks for that introduction. I'll quickly begin by sharing my screen. Are you all able to see it?
Yes.
You can see the first slide, right? The experience designer one.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, so like Anjali, she gave my introduction, so I'll move to the next slide. So I'll be talking a bit about, okay, I'll be talking about accessibility and inclusivity. I've been passionate about accessible design per se and inclusive design since I was maybe in the 9th grade, which I will also give a background about. So my agenda for the next 30 minutes would be to talk about the impact that accessible design can have, to take everyone through a few simulations about how people with disabilities experience the content on the web. And then I will take you all through a few examples of projects I've worked on and possible methods that we could include as a part of the research phase while designing systems or products or digital content. And post that we could have like a 5-minute question answer session. So to begin with, disability is like a result between a health condition and so like a health condition where combined with a particular environment. So if I have some, so if I have a visual impairment, it will only come to play when I am actually trying to view something on the screen, which is like in the form of which is in the form of digital content. Whereas if I have a hearing impairment, I can see, but only when it comes to an environment where I have to maybe listen to songs, it will come into play then. So that is like what the social statistics division has stated like as a definition for a disability. So diving into the first part of the presentation, which is impact, I'll talk about my background and why I'm interested in this particular area, the little bit of number statistics of India, the types of accessibility and companies follow that are doing a lot of work in this area, followed by a few poll questions if we get time, or we could do that at a later point. So my interest in this topic comes from, so I've not done like an education in accessible design as such, but since I was in the 9th grade, I've been a writer for students with cognitive disabilities. So I used to write papers, board papers, SSC and HSC board papers for students who had learning disabilities. Um, and so from that point, I knew that this whole experience of someone from a lower grade writing your paper was not something that they enjoyed. So something had to be done. Of course, like now we have a lot of voice enabled technologies like Alexa, and we have transcribers which could also write what the students are speaking, because the disability comes into play only when they're writing something. So yeah, so like my interest was there since then, which took like different roles. And I also had like I live with my grandmom who's like 80 plus, and she has a lot of 80% hearing loss. So even when like YouTube videos or movies don't have subtitles, it's really irritating because she cannot enjoy the content the same way that me and my sister can. So one major, so the RPWD Act, which was got into place in 1995, included, so RPWD is Rights for Persons with Disabilities. This was the act that was passed in 1995, which included only these 7 disabilities. So anybody outside this would not be able to get rights which these people had access to, whether it's government jobs, whether it's quotas in institutions, government institutions, or universities. And in 2016, it was a major win because all these 15 disabilities were added to this previous list that I showed. So dwarfism or sickle cell disease, acid attack victims, all of them would also get the benefits of this act, which was a great win because these people were also suffering, but they could not gain any benefits from these quotas up till 2016. So this is just like a little background. And this was an interesting article I read where like a lot of people who have disabilities, some of them can be seen, but some of them cannot be seen. And usually the ones that cannot be seen are suffer a lot more. So, and I mean, so maybe I can share the article to this since I have a lot of content lined up. So just to give a brief about the numbers, so according to the 2011 census that we had, which is almost 10 years back now, so the number was 26.8 million just in India, which is now approximately could be 40 to 80 million today, um, which constitutes 2.2% of India's total population. And out of this, 20% uh, equal, like 20% is into like the disability lies in movement, seeing and hearing, and 8% of them are suffering from multiple conditions. So roughly from this whole 2.21%, around 46 lakh people are between the age group of 10 to 19 years. And we know, like we might have just passed that teenage or that this particular age group. We know how into digital content we have been, and how much, how many resources are present on the web that we took advantage of or got advantage of, how easily accessible certain education has been for us. And nowadays everything is online, so web accessibility plays a really important role. And if the products or services we design are not accessible and inclusive, all these 46 to 50 lakh people are going to, like, they're not even going to be included in the target audience. So whatever, like if we design an app that is accessible, we should always keep in mind that it is going to benefit and include so many people. So this is just like a snippet from the report. And it roughly says that most of these people are from the rural areas, which goes back, like this is an entirely different topic. This goes back to like the childbirth and the women not being nourished in rural areas as much as urban areas, which is why a lot of them are born with disabilities. And another sector of disabilities is people who acquire it while they are living. So the percent of people who get this disability while they're born are mostly from the rural areas, and only 5 to 6% of these people with disabilities actually have like a college degree, which speaks like immensely about the kind of resources we might have given them access to, or they might have not had access to, which is why they haven't reached that particular state. And this is the reason why a lot of government positions, like even today, 4% or 5, I'm not sure, 4 or 5% quota is there in government institutes and universities for people with disabilities according to that act that was passed. But the problem is that nobody applies for it. So there can be two issues: either people are not qualified enough, the people with disabilities are not that qualified enough to even apply, or there is just like discrimination when employment is taking place or whatever, saying that this candidate is not suitable. So we still have like a long way to go in that sense. Quickly coming down to like designing for accessibility, there are, like, it can be rough, on a very high level, it can be described as like by following four guidelines. So perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So anything that we create, whether it is a product or it is a public space or it is like an application, anything on the web should be perceivable, and it should be visible to at least one of the user's senses, so that either they can hear it, they can see it, they can feel it. It needs to be like visible to at least one of them. It should be operable, they should be able to use it and interact it. So if it's a public space in a hospital, they should be able to navigate it, or look at the signage and navigate it. The third one is understandable. Anything that we make should be like, a user should be able to understand the information and operate the interface. So this is very particular to like a website, or it could also be related to like digital content, or like a public space also. And it needs to be robust, so it should always be adaptable with assistive technology. So there are lots, there is JAWS, there is Zoom text, there is voiceover, there are a lot of technologies named under the list of assistive technologies, which the product or interface we have should, like, it should be compatible with it. So if we follow these four guidelines, 90% or maybe 80% of the time, the product or service we're designing should be accessible. So yeah, this was a saying that I wanted to quote, which, like, it is our moral duty to remove all these barriers from participation, and we should give access to all these people who are facing some kind of disability to participate fully into everything that we design or create. So companies on the forefront that I've come across, y'all could add to the chat. I mean, y'all could add to the list, but Apple is doing a lot. And like, if you have an iPhone, you could go through the accessibility list under settings, and they have a lot of features for accessible, that take care of accessible design and make their device completely compliant with the AA guidelines. Adobe has, I'll take you all through like a plugin that Adobe recently launched. Google has a lot of, it has been in recent news for creating like Google Docs completely accessible. Microsoft has always been known for making their technologies accessible. So I will also maybe float like a list of videos that I found really helpful, which kind of enabled me to understand the kind of work that different companies are doing in this field. So these are a few poll questions. Maybe we could come back to these towards the end when we have the question answer session. But okay, so this was part one. And I think I'm doing okay in terms of time. So part two is simulations. So these are a set of, so I tried to gather a few plugins that I found really helpful. A small activity that y'all could, experience as I explain. And there are a few other simulations that I have. So the first plugin that I'd like to talk about is Stark. So this is available on Chrome, and it can be used as, so this is very, very particular. So all these three are very particular to digital content, and it can be a part of user experience design. It can be a part of information designing, visual design, or even user research. So research plays a really important role, because that's when this whole accessible personas can be included in your product research. So I will get there when I go to the examples part of it. But to start with, so Stark is available as a plugin for Sketch, and it is also available for Adobe XD. So if you design any artboard, so I've taken an illustration as an example here. And if I go to my plugins and I go to the colorblind simulation, the actual colors of, so I have an option to kind of see what kind of color blindness I want to simulate. So this is how the original illustration was, which is very distinct, and maybe the illustrator had this was taken from this source. And yeah, so it looks beautiful over here. Maybe the illustrator had certain colors in mind for certain elements, but a user with color blindness, there are many types under color blindnesses also. Color blindness comes under visual impairment, and protanopia will see the image like this. So something that we see like this, they will see like this. Someone with tritanopia will see it like this, and someone with deuteranopia will see it like this. Some Trypanopia is the least common kind of color blindness. These two are the most common, but you can see that they cannot see a lot of colors that the normal human eye can. So Adobe Color is another extension or a tool that everyone could use. Anybody who's contributing to the web can use this and should use this, because there is a lot of people who suffer from color blindness and are not able to experience images or illustrations the same way that we can. So here they allow us to create an accessible color theme where we upload the, so you could also go to the accessibility tools part of it and take an existing color theme, or you could upload your color theme and see if it's accessible. So here it says that A and B is not accessible, and it gives some parts also, so you could move this maybe towards this part. But so yeah, so now after moving it a little bit, now I can see that this is colorblind safe, and these 5 colors will be seen as 5 different colors by someone who is colorblind. So this is a very effective tool, and usually illustrations are not looked, I mean, nobody really says that, oh, this illustration is accessible and this is not. But Instagram is filled with illustrations, social media is filled with like artists who upload work. So maybe we could make a small attempt to, try and include this whole population that is colorblind and make something that they can also experience. Then there's a set of simulations that I have to kind of make us experience cognitive disabilities. So this next slide that I share will have of certain like few words written. So please try and read them by the color in which they are present and not by the word. So no one needs to unmute, but in your mind itself you can see how you go through this activity. So read it by the color, not the word. So I'll just give like a 5-second gap here.
Yes, by the word we can easily read, but how come it is possible? Like it's a cognitive disability it comes under?
Sorry.
So by the word, ma'am, we can easily read this, but is it under cognitive disability?
Yeah, so 1 minute. Yeah, so through this cognitive disabilities, I was trying to show that learning disabilities, LD, or yeah, so often the brain confuses what you actually see. So right now I see orange, but I'm actually I'm told continuously to read it as red. I'm reading black by default. My brain is telling me by default to read this as black, but it's actually violet or lavender. This is green. Like by default, when I look at it, it comes across as green, but again I have to like think twice for 2 seconds to say that, okay, no, this is not green, I have to read it as blue. So this is like a constant struggle that people with disabilities, like under that, someone who has been diagnosed with a learning disability might come across. So anything that we design, we shouldn't make it complex. Like the instruction should be very simple. Like what if I said just read this as orange, black, green? It would just be easy for everybody over here. So that is something that is like a constant struggle that someone with a disability, cognitive disability, might experience. And that's why the kind of content that we design we should try to make it straightforward. So that is what I was trying to kind of put across through this exercise. And this is also the same one. So will contain a few sentences which so if we have any volunteers, y'all could come up. But we like y'all can again just experience this offline, I mean without unmuting. So here the black cat has no has no has on sat on the hot roof. Okay, so like I had not read this in quite a while, so it actually took some trouble to get the words correct. So this is again something that people with a learning disability will experience. So the B and D, like this is a very common example, but B and D will be inverted for them a lot of times. They will not be able to distinguish between certain letters. So there are a lot of dyslexic fonts, like for specifically designed for dyslexia, which we could use. And there's a list of fonts that I could also share later, which is very learning disability friendly, and people with dyslexia can easily read these fonts and it doesn't confuse them. So this is another example. Maybe I can just leave this for 5 seconds and y'all can try and read this.
Mansi, would you like some volunteers to read this?
Yeah.
I mean, we can have people to raise their hands if anyone wants to volunteer.
Sure. Does anyone want to volunteer? Do we have any volunteers?
Yeah, Mansi, this is Anu. Hi.
Hi, Anu.
So,
Hi.
yeah, this sounds a bit German for some reason, but it's freakishly, it's really hard. I really can't make out what this
Yeah,
is.
so so this is like use this. This is make
Word
word
to
to
win.
Make words to win. So see, it's just a little difficult for us to understand, and this is what a lot of people experience. Like imagine if you saw an entire interface written like this, will you even want to take the trouble to go through everything? Like I would just get frustrated and I would maybe just quit. But yeah, so this is like a constant struggle for people, and if we can stick to the guidelines, follow them, and take that effort to make everything we design accessible, people will not face this uh, I don't know, like they will not face this trouble and it will just be easier for them. So thanks Anu for volunteering. um, and this is the last uh, simulation that I have, which is carpal tunnel syndrome. So this is not really a very common one, but and it doesn't fall under the 5 to 6 kind of visual impairments that people are asked to design for. But yeah, just like if you have a paper around you, you can just take it and make it into a straw, like just roll it into a straw, or I could also create that simulation here. Okay. Mm. Okay, just one minute. I think it's not sure. It's not loading for some reason. I'll just share like these 3 slides over here and then I can go back to my presentation. Um, yeah. So yeah, so this is like the normal size that yeah, so this is like the normal slide size that a website might. I just took a normal website for it as an example, but right now it looks like a very organized design, a good layout. It's well spaced. There's a lot of blank space, but then when you zoom in, it becomes like this, and it's not too nice. But someone with like who's using Zoom text might actually view it like this all the time. And someone who has a carpal tunnel syndrome will actually only see this part of it. They will not see the navigation. They will not be able to see the heading. They will not be able to see any content that lies in this area. So when we go to this, like there's this no coffee plugin that we have, which is available as a Google Chrome plugin extension, and that has like, you can look at a lot of different kinds of visual impairments that people with disabilities might face, and one of them is this. So a lot of times you will realize that the left and right sides of any content on the web are not too populated, and we're asked to leave us like some space on the left side and the right side. That's because a lot of people in fact face this problem where they cannot see the sides of the content. They yeah, so one minute, another, I wanted to share another. Yeah. Are you able to see my Google Chrome? It's an article.
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Okay. So this is how a normal person would see this. Whereas if I try this plugin and I see, like I can see how someone with a central macular degeneration issue will experience the content on the web, how someone with a peripheral, like the carpal tunnel syndrome will see, how someone with, so it has like glaucoma, and it has a lot of different kinds of disabilities that it simulates. So that helps. So if we, like, while we are designing, we could also kind of oh, okay, I'm trying to get the presenter view, but it does. Okay. Cool. So these were like a set of plugins that I wanted to take everyone through. Like maybe many of y'all might already know these, but if like while we're going through the design process, if we make use of these plugins that are available, they're free to use. So if at constant intervals, like if a designing an application is going to take around 10 days, after every 2 days, if I just spend 5 minutes reviewing my screens and see how different people are going to see it with the help of these simulations, it will help me create a more accessible and inclusive app. So that is one reason why it'll be good if all of us can take that extra effort to make sure that it's accessible. Then diving into the last part, that is examples. So I have 4 examples, and I'll quickly go through that because I think I have only 10 minutes left. So the first one, so this is a project that I did in my, so I focused a lot on inclusivity in college, and I got introduced to like the accessibility part of it while I was working at IBM. And because they had a lot of certifications, etc., because all the products had to be accessibility compliant. But back in college, I was very interested in inclusive design. So this is just like, I'd just like to take you all through it. So one of my projects was Fears to Cheers. So I tried to improve the experience that children face in hospitals. So usually if you see, so this was a game which was widely tested in hospitals in Bangalore. And my main aim was to create a very friendly environment and to make these kids aware of what is going to happen to them, because whenever a kid between the age of 5 to 10 enters a hospital, it's all like white walls, there's this Dettol kind of smell that's there, so they're not familiar to the smell, they're not familiar to the surroundings, everyone's wearing a white coat, people are very serious, no one's smiling, so it's a very and they become anxious and the anxiety level increases, which affects their image of how they would perceive a doctor. So the doctor is usually the bad guy. Whenever like a child has to go, they'll cry a lot, they'll create a big scene. So what I wanted to do was, so these were like a set of 8 blocks, and each side of the block had a storyboard. So like there was no text, so the child could arrange it in whatever area, I mean whatever order they wanted, and they could narrate the story with their parents or anybody who was present in that play area. And all these stories would end up in the doctor, like end up in showcasing the doctor as a person who was just helping the child to get back to normal. So if it's like a teeth, like a tooth problem, and the child has been taken to a dentist, then the child will only, like through this story that the child will create through different permutations and combinations, they can like the doctor is portrayed as someone who will enable the child to have ice cream again. So it was very simple stories, and usually like even when we go to a dentist, we're told that okay, you can have ice cream after you leave. So when a child is told that and given that as an incentive, then they kind of look forward to it, because everyone likes ice cream, like as far as children are concerned. So this was, yeah, so this was an attempt that I made to make this environment inclusive for children between the age group of 5 to 10. And the response was great, but I couldn't really take it forward, but maybe I will get back to it at some point. But I continued my like to explore the area of healthcare. And the next project I did was with Nimhans in Bangalore, where I, like along with a team of seven of my batchmates and I, we started this project, and which was a collaboration between the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences. So we worked with the neuroscience department, which was doing some work in the area of radiology. And the some common issues that they were facing was low patient doctor ratio. One doctor had to take care of 400 patients. It was a government run body, so it was like a lot of people were coming there because of the low costs that were involved. And then there was low patient, I mean, there was low information retention, because many of these patients, since the costs were so low, they would come from rural areas and they would not be that well educated. So they wouldn't have like a formal education, and their medical vocabulary would be really low. So anything that someone from like a radiology department said sounded like uh, Chinese to them, like they wouldn't know what they mean. And of course, like because India is such a linguistic has such a linguistic diversity, they all came from different parts of the country. So because this was located in Bangalore, people would come from Tamil Nadu, Kerala, uh, Odisha, West Bengal. And as a result of all these barriers, they would, like the doctors would have to repeat the information, which would, and it would end up in the patients making uninformed decisions. So the aim of this project was to help the patients make informed decisions and create like an inclusive app that would help them to achieve this goal. So so I'll only go to like the research methodologies and tools that we used as part of this to kind of understand our target demographic without any bias, because they were like none of us had experienced actually going to Nimhans and undergoing like a brain surgery or like getting an aneurysm removed. We didn't know how it was to be one of them, so we didn't want to involve any bias, and that was the reason why we went through like a very rich research phase. We had a lot of activities that we had, like we had card sorting, where we kind of understood what the priorities of the patients were. Like we had to make them a part of the process, we had to include them. We couldn't just say that okay, you don't understand English, so you cannot be a part of this, because consent forms were only present in English. So anybody who is not well educated wouldn't be able to read it, and it was just filled with jargon. So we had to do something for that. Then so card sorting was for understanding their priorities. Image show and tell was to understand the kind of illustrations or the kind of visuals that they relate to, because some, like I may like some minimalistic icons, but they can't make any sense of it, so that doesn't justify. We had to we had to confirm from them. we conducted a lot of workshops with this target demographic to understand, to create like an environment where they could share. Including various languages was a big big pro that we had in our app, where anything we designed used to be in 8 languages, and these 8 languages were were for people who would come from these different states to Bangalore to get treated at NIMHANS. And this was we had the Pictionary, we had card sorting, image show and tell, like I just said. This was how the card sorting looked. So personal attention from doctors was something that was very important to a lot of patients. Understanding the treatment was of utmost importance. Something like risks was not a problem because that would be there anyway, but they'd like to know more about it. So so that was it about NHANS. I can share the link if anyone's interested in going through the specific tools in detail, but for now I can maybe limit it to this. And then this is the last part of it. So persona building was one. Okay, is there time? We have
We have a couple of more minutes.
Okay, so this is available online as well. So maybe I can just take any questions if there are. So persona building. So we should. So one very important thing which I believe in is making personas that need some accessibility or assistive technology as part of the list of personas that we have in the research phase. So if we do that, it will be very useful, and right from the research phase we'll be considering people with disabilities, which will help in making our design much more richer and accessibility compliant. Yeah, so this list, like I've created a set of 6 personas that need some kind of accessibility, and I've also, so I can share the link again. Body storming is another method that is very effective if used in the research phase. And situational disabilities is another method that we can refer to in order to experience how someone with an accessibility need will feel. And yeah, that's all. I can share these links with maybe Amit or Anjali, and they could circulate it. So if there are any questions, I could take them.
That was a very, very informative and enlightening presentation. Thank you so much for that, Mansi.
Thank you.
I think we are open for questions now. So if anyone has
Yeah.
to say something or ask any questions, please, you can raise your hands. All right. So we have Divya.
Okay.
Hi, Mansi. Thanks for
Hi,
the
Divya.
presentation. It was really, really interesting. I had a question about, like when you talk about disabilities, do you also consider mental health disabilities as well? I mean, if you think about this, like accessibility right now, the first thing that comes into my head is, if you're colorblind or if you're differently abled in the physicality sense, but when it's a mental health disorder, it's intangible, right? So do you consider that also when you design digital products?
Yeah, so that is like, it needs to be compliant to mental health conditions as well as per the act. I personally don't have any experience where I've looked at a mental illness particularly, but something that I can think of, like a lot of people get fits or seizures. So if that is considered as a mental illness, then any animation that you are using needs to, like, one guideline for particularly that is anything on the screen that moves needs, like if it lasts more than 5 minutes, then I should have the control, like the user should have the control to stop it. It should not be like automatic. And if I don't have the ability to stop it, it could trigger some emotions which can result in like a seizure or something like that. So that is the thing I can relate to right now, but I'd like to maybe look up on this particular thing a bit more and maybe get back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading about dark patterns and how I watched this TED talk on how people with bipolar disorder, you can't make out if someone is bipolar, right? And they have this
Yeah.
addiction to shop a lot. So when they see a lot of ads on Amazon again and again and again, so that sort of aggravates the bipolarity. So I mean, I was just thinking in the mental health sphere, how do people design? But thanks, I think that answered my
Okay.
question.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. So we have Anu. I think Anu
Yeah,
has a.
hi. Hi, Anjali. Thank you. So
Hi.
it's not a it's not a question, Mansi, but it's probably to everyone. I had a food for thought. So while it's imperative that system should be accessible, uh, I think you have presented that really well. But should it also be inclusive? I mean, could it be contradictory to our logic in our process of the whole design thinking, where we focus on a target user, where we focus on a persona? So, could inclusive design trying to fit into every design, could that be contradictory to our normal design thinking process?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's I'm asking.
Okay. So I think I had a conversation with Amit regarding this, where we were discussing about how like there is one size fits all, and how like can it be customizable, or does everything we do have to fit everyone? Or I mean, because a lot of people believe that if you want to make your website or web content accessible, it will not look as good as you want it to look. Uh, Without the guidelines, but yeah, I don't think I have an answer for that right now.
All in for accessibility, like for example, you mentioned the whole colorblind thingy.
Hmm.
It is like, I mean, it's imperative thing, you have
Yeah.
most of the students, who are applying to maybe an exam or something, and then they find that some information is not readable. It's going to cause a disastrous outcome. But
Yeah.
inclusivity is something that I'm talking about here. uh,
Okay.
I mean, maybe in my head I have a design which is more of like an output. So should it be inclusive is the question that I have for everyone, not just you, Ansi. But I mean,
Okay. According to me, like if I had to say like a sentence about it, it would be like inclusivity is not like uh, a law. Like it doesn't have to be inclusive, but because these patients in Nimhans, for example, were functioning, like everything was functioning even before this app was introduced, where they would be explained in their mother tongue. But even like inclusivity is just, I feel like it's more of an emotion, where if you feel like you should
hmm,
be including everybody, then you have to take that extra effort, because we have to record these audio clips in 8 languages with like 8 different translators, so it was a lot of effort. So if you're so if you're not there's no law defining that it has to be inclusive, but it's always better if it is that, according to me.
hmm, yeah.
All
Thank you.
right. So we have one last question. Thank you so much, Anu. We have one last question from Rupa.
Yeah. So hi Mansi, it was
Hi.
really enjoyed the presentation, very informative, and kudos on that. So I just had one question, like on the execution part. I mean, right? I mean, when we were working at big companies or any irrespective of the company size, when we are working on a project that is at scale, how do we make sure our team in itself plans the design sprint? The design sprint, and also the team members are planned in such a way that we uh, uh, execute these things also in particularly, yeah, right? Because when most of the people, when they do design sprints, it is about how information architecture will be planned, etc, etc, right? But how do we, like, do we have a usability person who evangelizes the entire thing, advocates for it, or how is this entire thing planned from the research to delivery of a product and then prototype testing? How is, like, how
um,
did you find in that overall execution?
so if I have to talk about that, I mean, what I know is Yeah, of course, like it needs to, like if there is a sprint dedicated for accessibility, it will be great, and it will be taken care of since day one. But the way it happens right now is, at least in IBM, um, because I'm working on a product right now, but the design system that we are using is called Carbon Design System, which itself is accessible.
Yeah, yeah.
So if that is accessible,
Okay.
then it is considered that whatever we're designing is accessible. But it's not true. I mean, it's not always true that just because I follow an accessible theme, my end product is going to be accessible. So that extra check will have to be made at different points in the process. But yeah,
Right.
like I would say that something like body storming or something like including a persona that needs some assistive technology is the best way, because if you
Right.
have a persona that needs it, then at every point you're going to relate the interface or product back to that persona. So yeah,
Right.
but there are a lot of companies that have accessibility advocates and people who are dedicated to checking if but unfortunately this is done, like I don't know, but there have been articles that say that this is done because the companies want to avoid lawsuits, because in the US
Yeah, especially from
companies are
GDPR
sued.
in that case.
So yeah, but
Yeah,
it will be good if they do it voluntarily without that fear of just lawsuits. So
I can already see Amit smiling. So
All right. Thank you so much, Mansi.
thanks.
Um,
thank
Yeah.
you.
and thank you, Rupam.